Area 51.
What exactly goes on at Area 51?
The Area 51.
Area 51.
Area 51.
ET craft, ET technology, anything like that at Area 51. This is why S4 was made specifically to separate it there.
Is the United States government lying to its citizens? Are there really aliens in Area 51? Bob Lazar seems to think so.
Element 115 was what we would call the fuel, what provided the power for the reactor to work.
For decades, this physicist turned conspiracy theorist has told stories of how he encountered aliens and their spacecraft while working at the highly secretive Area 51. Now, many years later, his story has experienced a massive revival, as our curiosity pushed us to seek answers about our extraterrestrial neighbors. Today, we will take you on a journey into this strange story, exploring Bob Lazar's shocking revelation about Area 51 that could change everything. The early life of Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar first made headlines in 1989 after coming out with shocking revelations about Area 51, aliens, and the many secrets of the United States government. He's come a long way since then, becoming one of the most famous conspiracy theorists in the world. But before he became a world-renowned ufologist, Lazar was a humble little boy with a pretty strange childhood. Born on January 26, 1959, in Coral Gables, Florida, Lazar claims a chunk of his life details has been removed from official records. But from what we know, his parents are Albert Lazar and Phyllis Berliner, although the rest of the story is quite sketchy to say the least. You see, even though official sources state that he was born in 1959, there is no actual birth certificate to confirm this, as it seems to have disappeared and cannot be retrieved anymore. But then, the story gets even stranger. Lazar claims he was a prodigy, an ingenious boy, who spent the most of his time studying the rudiments of science. With this knowledge, he claimed he once outfitted his bicycle with a jet engine, making it go over 100 miles per hour. These stories of Lazar's bizarre childhood played a huge role in his rise to infamy, and it's a script worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster. You see, unlike most kids, Lazar's high school records are noticeably absent as well, but he was said to have attended the Pierce Junior College in Los Angeles. After graduating college, he moved on to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, obtaining a master's degree in physics, before snatching another master's degree in electronics from the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. After graduation, Lazar worked as a physicist at the Los Alamos Nelson Physics Facility, a claim that has been verified through a newspaper report from July 30, 1982. In the report, Lazar talks about the jet-powered car he built by simply replacing the normal engine with a jet-powered version, while claiming that it could be replicated on any car. A couple of years after this, Lazar found himself in the last place he'd expected to be, a place that would later become known as Area 51. The official history of Area 51. In the 1950s, the United States government began the development of a new breed of planes, known as the U-2. This project was meant to propel aviation to heights that no one ever dreamed of and increase the power of the United States Air Force. The project was quite hush-hush, so very few details about it made it to the public. As a first step in bringing this vision to life, the top officials of the U-2 development projects flew to Nevada in search of a site where the new aircraft could be safely and secretly tested. As they flew over Grou Lake, near the northeast corner of the Nevada Proving Ground, they spotted what appeared to be an airfield. This proving ground had been used as an aerial gunnery range during World War II, so it was perfect for testing the U-2 without drawing attention. The spot was approved by President Eisenhower to serve as a new top-secret base known as Area 51 or Watertown. To keep the location secret, personnel working at the base only accessed it by aircraft. And since the U-2 aircraft were built in Burbank, California, they had to be disassembled, transported to Area 51, and then reassembled for testing. According to official documents, the U-2 wasn't the only agency testing its equipment at the facility. Other aircraft, like the CIA's A-12 Oxcart, had their first and major test flights at the facility, so it was more of a multi-purpose facility for some of the most top-secret flight testing by several agencies. Or is it? Because since the 1950s, this base has been plagued by rumors of extraterrestrial activity, alien abduction, and UFO sightings. Considering the fact that the United States government just recently admitted to the official existence of Area 51, it's safe to say there's more to this place than the government is letting on. But how did Bob Lazar's story get intertwined with Watertown? Bob Lazar and the mystique of Area 51. On May 15, 1989, a CBS reporter named George Knapp sat down with a silhouette figure identified as Dennis for one of the strangest interviews ever aired on television. Dennis claimed he had worked at a clandestine military base known as S4, where he encountered extraterrestrial technology, flying saucers, and real-life aliens. A couple of months later, the identity of Dennis was revealed to be Bob Lazar, who had to take on a new identity just so he could protect himself. In the many interviews that followed, Lazar talked about being recruited for a special assignment, which required that he work in the propulsion system of some new equipment the United States was developing. As a physicist, Lazar nurtured a special interest in propulsion systems, so he took the job with enthusiasm. On his first day, Lazar and other staff reportedly gathered at a facility known as EG and G before they were airlifted to Grou Lake by a military aircraft. They were then picked up in buses with blacked-out windows or no windows at all, so none of them could trace their way in or out of the facility. On getting to S4, he was introduced to some machines and spacecraft he and most of us have never seen before. And while there were many advanced aircraft in the US military at the time, this one didn't look like it originated from our planet. At S4, the scientists were split into different groups based on their area of expertise, and since Lazar was well-versed in propulsion systems, he was tasked with reverse engineering these alien spacecraft, which he claimed landed onto our planet many, many years ago. These spacecraft didn't have wings, or the kind of engines that power our aircraft. Instead, Lazar claims they employed some sort of anti-gravity technology, floating through the air like a scene from a sci-fi movie. The propulsion system of this aircraft was different, as it ran on an antimatter reactor fueled by a chemical element known as E115, which we'll get into later in the video. He claimed that this incredible element generated a gravity wave, which allowed the vehicle to glide by and also avoid visual detection by bending the light around it. After dismantling the craft, Lazar studied the antimatter reactor, which he claimed emitted such a powerful force field that it could repulse the human flesh. The alien spacecraft was also split into two levels. On the upper level, you will find the reactor, along with an antenna extending to the top and 3 gravity amplifiers. Connected to the amplifiers are the gravity emitters on the lower level, which he claims can rotate 180 degrees to release a gravity beam or anti-gravity wave. During his time in the program, Lazar claims he had to read briefing documents describing the historical involvement of Earth for the past 10,000 years. But this time, there were other previously unknown characters in the stories. He described them as gray aliens from a planet orbiting the twin binary star system, Zeta Reticuli. He also claimed that the seats of these saucers were approximately child-sized and that he saw an alien carcass of the same size while working at S4. One day, while walking down the hall at the facility, the scientist briefly glanced through a door window and saw 2 men in lab coats talking to a small, strange being with long arms, which he believed was one of the extraterrestrial beings the United States government is hiding from its citizens. Lazar claimed that during his time there, he was able to re-engineer an alien spacecraft, tweaking it to make it operable by humans. As soon as the process was done, though, Lazar found out that the Air Force was going to test the alien spacecraft over Grou Lake in the middle of the night, so he invited some of his friends over to the desert to watch the show. These trips went on for a while until his superiors found out what he had been doing and terminated his appointment with the agency. After losing his job, Lazar decided to take the story to the press, leading to that unforgettable 1989 interviews. It was this interview that brought Area 51 to the limelight, and since then, the military base has been iconized in pop culture as a symbol of ufology, alien craze, and the allure of conspiracy theories. Element 115. In his 1989 interviews, Lazar also talked about a secret element that's not on the periodic table, but is probably more powerful than all the elements on our planet. He called it Element 115, and according to Lazar, It's the fuel that powers these alien spacecraft, enabling them to perform incredible feats in our airspace. At the time, there was no way to synthesize an element that heavy on our planet due to its instability. So Lazar theorized that it probably came from a planet where such rare elements exist naturally. If it would ever be synthesized in the future, though, Lazar predicted that the element wouldn't exist in its stabilized form, unlike the version that was being used to power the flying saucers. At the time of this discovery, most experts in the scientific community laughed at the idea that such an element could even exist. But many years later, Lazar's claims were officially confirmed by the same scientific community after the official discovery of element 115. It was in 2013 when a group of Russian scientists working at the Flerov Laboratory for Nuclear Reactions conducted a groundbreaking experiment. Led by a nuclear physicist named Yuri Oganessian, the scientist bombarded certain particles together using a particle accelerator to create this super heavy element that only existed for a fraction of a second. They named it moscovium. What makes this element so special is that it is near what the scientists call the island of stability, where some super heavy nuclei might have much longer lifetimes. Instead of living for less than a second, these elements could exist for minutes, days, and even years, which is long enough for us to use them for practical applications. If we could ever harness element 115 as an energy source, it has the potential to change the landscape of science and technology forever. But even though scientists only recently confirmed its existence, element 115 has been a buzzword since Bob Lazar informed the world of its existence. But even though the scientist and conspiracy theorist has gained a lot of fans who believe his claims to the letter, there are a couple inconsistencies in this story which bears mentioning. Lazar's educational background. Earlier we mentioned how Lazar's high school history seems to have been wiped from every record. However, that's not the part of his educational background that's been called into question. While he claimed he had obtained master's degrees from MIT and Caltech, none of these institutions also have any record of him being a student there. Lazar explains this by saying that the government was trying to wipe away every trace of his existence. But that's not where it ends. There are also claims that he graduated from high school late and that he came out bottom third in his class. While these claims have not been substantiated with physical proof, Lazar has countered these claims many times, refuting them as mere fabrications. But then again, that's not where it ends. Remember how Lazar claimed he worked at Los Alamos Meson Physics Facility? Well, a lot of people dug into the agency's database and found no one named Bob Lazar in the records. This led to speculations that he probably worked there through a contract company, and not directly. Although all traces of Lazar seem to have been expunged from the records, investigators were able to locate a Los Alamos phone book, which had Lazar's name on it, signaling that he indeed used to be a staff there, although it's hard to draw conclusions with only one piece of evidence. So the question remains open. The FBI raid. Is the United States government trying to silence Bob Lazar? Does he really know too much? Well, a lot of his fans seem to think so, and it's all because of a very high-profile FBI raid that took place in 2019. While many of his supporters claimed the government was trying to capture the rare chemical in Lazar's possession, those on the other side of the spectrum believe there's more to the story. To understand this whole story, we must go back to right after Lazar gained popularity following his infamous interview. Although he became a sort of celebrity after that, Lazar decided to maintain a private life instead of milking the attention. He would eventually open a business called United Nuclear Scientific, a company that supplied scientific equipment in New Mexico and then Michigan. Lazar supplied everything from radioactive ore to ammonium nitrate. According to the scientist, his business caters for the exotic and potentially dangerous side of science, although that has gotten him in trouble a couple of times. For example, as soon as it was officially confirmed that element 115 was a thing, rumors began to swirl that Lazar was in possession of a more stable variant of the rare element. Then, while working alongside a filmmaker to produce a documentary about his life, Lazar's company United Nuclear Scientific was raided by the FBI and local police. This aroused suspicion from everyone, from his devoted fans to people who have opposed him in the past. Theories began to circulate that the FBI was probably trying to recover a sample of element 115 that Lazar took from Area 51. Others also claimed that Lazar has been under government surveillance for decades, and this was simply part of the harassment campaign against him by federal agents. However, it turns out to be stranger than fiction. According to findings uncovered during investigations, the 2016 raid was actually part of an ongoing murder investigation involving both state, local, and federal authorities. A report written by the Michigan State Police Sergeant Detective Thomas Ragala, the event that led to the raid began in late 2015 with the mysterious death of 31-year-old Janelle Struzel. Going by the doctor's report, Struzel seemed to have been poisoned with a substance called thallium sulfate. This colorless, odorless, and tasteless substance is commonly known as the prisoner's poison due to its high toxicity and difficulty to detect. It's also used in the manufacture of electronics, glass, and even in the pharmaceutical industry, which might give a person like Lazar grounds for being in possession of such substances. The Michigan State Police claimed that Lazar's company sells thallium, and the police search was to find out who his customers were. Perhaps they could find a clue as to who was responsible for the murder being investigated. It's worth noting that Lazar was not listed as a suspect in the case. It's also worth noting that Lazar stated that he didn't believe everyone involved in the raid was aware of his work in alien spacecraft or knew anything about the special element, as most of them only asked about the thallium. However, he also stated that at least 2 of the agents were more concerned about his past and outrightly asked him about the location of the On-15. The search gave Lazar a boost in popularity, bringing his story to limelight once again. But in spite of the many attempts to discredit his story, Lazar's story has been corroborated a couple of times by other important figures who have worked for secret U.S. government agencies in the past, the UAP Task Force. On December 16, 2017, the New York Times published a story that sent shockwaves through the entire nation. A detailed report implying that the extraterrestrial beings are real and the United States has been tracking them for a while. According to the article, there is a secret department in the United States government no one knows about, and it's called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, and its objective is to study, locate, and possibly identify any UFOs roaming around our skies. This top-secret program has reportedly found evidence of strange aircraft that flew in seemingly impossible ways, and for ufologists, this was undeniable proof that the United States government has been in possession of alien tech for years without divulging the truth to the American public. It was also a dream come true, because this was one of the extremely rare occasions when a reputable new agency would carry news concerning aliens and UFOs, which signified that Americans were really ready to have a conversation on the truth about UFOs. These shocking revelations were brought to light by a former Pentagon employee turned whistleblower named Luis Elizondo, who claimed he was part of the program for about 5 years. Elizondo was the man in charge of a small program called Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification, a program run by the Department of Defense to protect Americans from extraterrestrial attacks, identify any form of threat accessing our atmosphere, and report any unusual activities in our skies. Between 2000 and 2012, Elizondo claimed he witnessed many unexplained occurrences which could only be attributed to the existence of aliens and their activities on our planet. Adding more credibility to this story is the fact that his claims were confirmed by former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, the same man who arranged for the program's funding, as well as by Robert Bigelow, the billionaire donor who won the exclusive contract to manage the program and its findings. So, what specifically did these special agents find, and how does it confirm Lazar's story? Well, Elizondo and the UAP task described sightings of aircraft that apparently moved at blistering speed with no wings, visible engines, rotors, or any form of propulsion system. Unlike traditional aircraft, These UAPs reportedly simply hovered with no apparent means of lift, denying gravity and breaking the very laws of physics. It is also believed that the agency modified some buildings in Las Vegas for the storage of rare metal alloys and materials that Elizondo and his men recovered from these unidentified aerial phenomena, which is very similar to Lazar's story about Area 51, the hovering aircraft stored there, and the government's secret experiment on alien spacecraft. Will the US government shut down Area 50 after they capture what no one was supposed to see? Probably not. In addition to these claims, researchers have also studied people who have had close encounters with these purported alien spacecraft and the psychological effects such an experience had on them. To further solidify their claims, the article makes reference to a bizarre footage that has been circulating online since 2015, but has never been confirmed by the United States until now. Now it's time for our subscribers' pick. Will the US government shut down Area 50 after they capture what no one was supposed to see? Bob Lazar seems to think so. In a recent revelation, Bob Lazar spoke about his encounters with actual aliens in Area 51, describing them as beings with large heads and bulging eyes, more like the popular Hollywood description of our otherworldly neighbors. But how true are these accounts? And could it really be possible that the United States has been hiding its stash of extraterrestrial spacecraft for decades? If these stories are indeed true, it could alter the course of history and challenge everything we know about our world, our solar system, and the universe at large. Share your thoughts on these disturbing stories with us in the comments down below. Now, let's get back to the video. David Fravor and the haunting encounter. On the morning of November 14, 2004, a highly decorated officer of the United States Navy, Dave Fravor, and his weapons system officer launched into the clear blue sky of Southern California, just 100 miles southeast of San Diego. But nothing could have prepared them for the disturbing encounter they were about to have. The Nimitz carrier Strike Group Fravor was assigned to had been on station for a few weeks at the time on a mission to integrate the operations of the carrier with her various support ships, which included the USS Princeton, as they prepared for deployment into combat. However, what Fravor didn't know was that for the past few days, officials on the USS Princeton had been picking up some bizarre signals on their heavily advanced radar. For example, on November 10, the fire control officer and the fire control senior chief claimed to have detected multiple returns descending from far above the radar, which would suddenly drop from way up in the skies to just 50 feet above the water level in a matter of seconds. While the United States has some of the most advanced aircraft of any military, none of them could perform this kind of feat, considering that it was picked up by the most sophisticated and powerful tactical radar on the planet. They decided to investigate the signals further. As soon as Fravor and his crew arrived aboard the Nimitz, the fire control crew on Princeton saw an opportunity to use the advanced aircraft to solve the mystery of the unidentified signal. When the fast movers were informed to be on the lookout for a UAP, their reaction was a mix of shock and intrigue. And while they've seen many strange things on the job, this was going to be the strangest thing they've ever encountered. Lieutenant Colonel Cheeks Kurth was the first to observe a huge disturbance on the surface of the ocean, contrasting the calm and glassy smooth view of the ocean that day. He claimed that the turbulent section was between 150 to 300 wide, or as Fravor later described it, the size of a Boeing 747. When Dave finally got a good look at the disturbance as well, it looked as though a ship or airplane had just sunk there, but considering how generally calm the waters were on that day, that seemed unlikely. But after scanning the area to try to pick up the source of the disturbance, his radar detected nothing, which was quite strange because it would take a huge aircraft or ship to create such a massive disturbance in the middle of the ocean. Then, after a while, he saw it. An enormous object hovering over the water surface. According to reports, this unidentified aerial phenomenon was the size of an FA-18 Hornet, measuring about 40 feet long with no wings or visible propulsion system. Dave also mentioned how the disturbance on the water surface didn't create rotor wash, the turbulence caused when helicopters hover above water. But that's not the most disturbing part. As the pilots flew closer to this bizarre object, it began to mimic their movements, as if it was observing them. And then like a flash, it was gone, flying faster than anything Dave had ever seen. And as for the water, it instantly became clear like nothing had happened. This chilling experience sent chills down the spines of Fravor and other officers who witnessed the scene. But when they got back to base and delivered their reports, no one really believed they had seen an actual alien spacecraft. Fraser and his team were constantly teased by their friends, and the whole thing got swept under the rug. That was until 2009, when Fraser claims he was contacted by a government official doing an unofficial investigation. Shortly after that, he was also contacted by Luis Elizondo, the same officer who would later lead one of the biggest whistleblowing campaigns concerning alien tech and extraterrestrial activities. As soon as news of these encounters hit the airwaves, people started drawing parallels between Lazar's description of the alien spacecraft he saw in Area 51 and the one described by Fravor and Elizondo. But then again, these are not the only government agents who came out with stories of encounters with extraterrestrial tech, confirming that there might be an element of truth to Lazar's claims. David Grou. Until 2023, American intelligence official David Grou was part of an elite team of agents responsible for collecting and reverse engineering crashed UFOs. Under a special program initiated by the Department of Defense, Grou claimed that they not only worked with alien spacecraft, but actual non-human beings who were reportedly not from our planet. While these claims may have been tossed outside the window, the fact that it was made by a high-ranking officer prompted a hearing by the Congress, where Grou was able to get into more details about his alien encounters, this time under oath. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access, Grou told the committee. And although he didn't exactly mention Area 51, there's no denying that there are some similarities between this story and Bob Lazar's account. According to Grou, during his time with the agency, he was responsible for investigating what several military, defense, and other security agencies knew about alien spacecraft, although he wasn't permitted to see them with his own eyes. He also mentioned that the government has probably been hiding these biological alien species since as far back as the 1930s, secretly conducting experiments to understand their physiology. Going into the specifics, Grou also confirmed that the United States government was in possession of a bell-like craft, originally recovered in Italy by Mussolini's government in 1933. David Fravor also appeared at the hearing to talk about his own encounter, along with a retired Navy pilot named Ryan Graves. In 2004, Graves came out to announce that he encountered UAPs off the Atlantic coast every day for at least a couple of years. This experience pushed him to create an organization called Americans for Safe Aerospace, a non-profit organization that he claims will voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial air crews and military veterans who also claim to have encountered strange objects while flying. Graves described the kind of spacecraft he observed as dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere, with the apex or tips of the cube touching the inside of the sphere. While there are those who believe that these stories are fabricated, just like when Lazar first came out with his story, there are millions more who are starting to look deeper into these alien conspiracy theories. But with the CIA coming out to declare that most UAP sightings were not alien spacecraft but top-secret advanced hyperjets being developed by the United States government, it's hard to draw the line between truth and fiction. But what if the United States government does have these alien spacecraft and biological specimens in its possession? What if conspiracy theorists like Bob Lazar were right all along? How would this shape the political climate and rewrite the history of our world? Only time will tell how everything plays out. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.